welcome to Jtimes, where we uncover the Kabbalah take on Jewish issues and current events. With us, as usual, Kabbalist Dr. Michael Laitman. Hello, Dr. Laitman. And our topic is a continuation of a previous show where we were talking about integral education. And we said that, well, first of all, you made a promise in a previous show that we were going to detail the principles of integral education, and perhaps we should just get straight to it, because we said that integral education is a must today because everyone is interconnected and interdependent, and we have no choice but to learn how to work together because we are living in an integrated world. So how do we become integrated people, integral people? How do we develop integral thinking? What are the basic guidelines? If you can just detail them in bullet points, it would be great, and then we can elaborate on them.
First of all, we have to explain to people that unity, it is a part of nature's plan, that human society is developing according to that plan, whether we want it or not. Like in the past, we came down from the trees, came out of caves, started living in families, tribes, and so on, then cities, bigger cities, countries, and so on, and now suddenly the whole world became integral, starting from a small family up to the whole world suddenly becoming a big family.
All right, globalization.
Yes, interdependence.
Okay.
And nature's plan is to bring us, whether we want it or not, to a state where we will be as one family. Despite the fact that we're all egoists and that we don't even want families today, get married, have children, and to be obligated towards each other. No one wants to know what's going on with someone else. I have money, I go to the supermarket, buy something, have my laptop or my TV or my mobile, and I don't even want to see people. Screens are enough for me and my mobile in order to be connected to others. Specifically with this big ego where I want to hide myself behind all those gadgets, I have to be interconnected with everyone. That's really this paradox that exists. On the one hand, we have the inclination to build around each one of us like kind of a bubble for no one to touch me, and I want my private life. On the other hand, in that very private life of mine, I discovered that I'm connected with the entire world, interconnected, and if I will not think about the whole world from this bubble of mine, I will not be able to survive myself.
Okay, so step one, how do I begin to develop that kind of thinking?
No, wait.
Before that, okay.
Nature is advancing us toward that, usually, as usual, through suffering, torments, blows, showing us how bad things are right now, and we look for something better, and then we choose different paths, searching maybe here, maybe there, like people that lost their way in the forest. And then we go, maybe we should do like this, go there, try this, and we lose a lot of strength while doing that, stumbling upon many problems. In the meantime, we become despaired, everything collapses. Really, everything is deteriorating in this world, and we really see it from what's happening in the world today. If we'll continue advancing this way through nature's blows, through this negative kind of pressure, we'll maybe come to very unpleasant outbursts, because nature knows only one thing: to advance through suffering. But there is, or better to say, within our human wisdom, within our human sciences, there is a special science that really tells us how, in a global world that's developing, not asking us about it whatsoever, but that's the future, whether we want it or not. First of all, everyone has to acknowledge that this is what's going to happen. That's how things are. How can we advance toward that state, toward that world, in a willing fashion, understanding that it's good, preferable, beneficial, to such an extent that we have no choice, that we start thinking that, yeah, it's good. People never thought from the in a primitive tribe that slavery is better than a primitive tribe. And it really is that way. And there were many revolutions made in order to reach slavery. And then from slavery to a different kind of regime and so on. We never thought that the next kind of regime has to be good until it's really present within the previous regime. And the previous regime seems as something ill. And the future regime seems that something that you must come to. You have no choice. And through revolutions and outbursts, we move from phase to phase.
Okay, so you're saying now is the stage of the integral stage.
Yes. But the problem is, in the integral stage, it's much bigger, harder than in all previous stages, because on all previous stages of our development, we simply developed from a smaller ego to a bigger ego, from a big ego to an even greater ego, meaning we were always on the same path with our nature, even though there were revolutions on the way and riots, and we see it worldwide, it's well known from history. Whereas here we have a unique problem because we have to go against our ego and not with it. Our ego, it's not pushing us forward. It's as if came to a stop, as if nature is pushing me to go forward and I don't want to. Pushing me, I don't want to.
Yeah, on the one hand, I want to be isolated from people, but on the other hand, if we're becoming more selfish and more exploitive of other people, then I need to connect to them.
So here, I'm in a kind of a split between two opposite forces within me, and what should I do? It's like in a family that wants to divorce. They still live in the same apartment, property, kids, and everything, and they hate each other and can no longer be together.
I'll give you a worse scenario. People get divorced already, but because of the crisis, they can't afford different houses. So they live together. They're divorced already. They live together. Sometimes one of the ex-spouses gets a new one, and they all live in the same house.
Double tragedy. So what do?
So they have to do integral education inside that house.
This is why when we explain all of these things, and we need an explanation and exercise and clips and songs and everything, until a person gets the thing, until he understands it has to do with our internality, culture, everything. It's not that in 10 minutes we can explain it like we're sitting and talking here, but when we explain it to people, they start understanding that either we progress through problems coming to us from nature, or we'll start preceding nature and start advancing in that direction willingly. And this form where we ourselves go and make ourselves an integral society, we build the integral society ourselves before the blows come, before the pressure comes, that's through integral education. Meaning here we explain to them, first of all, before the education, how worthwhile it is, how much we can save, problems, troubles, calamities, and with all that we have with arms and everything going on in the world. So
there's plenty of them, no question. So the first I would say step is information. People have to know the kind of world they live in, where it is going, that it's irreversible, and that they now have to learn how to function in a world that's going to become more and more integrated, not less.
They already see it before they saw. And I started this explanation many years ago. But people didn't hear. And really there was no proof. A bit here, there, we have some problems with drugs, family, culture, education. No, it's not that bad. Until it reached a financial crisis. And now it's already possible to talk about it. This is why only now we're starting to publicize this method to release it to the entire world. And again, I'm repeating that this method exists only in the people of Israel, and only they can disperse it, disseminate it, give it to the nations. And giving the integral method of education to the nations is called being light for the nations, and be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, as the Torah explains, that we have to be the teachers, the educators of the whole world, specifically in this.
Okay, that brings me to one of the principles that because I did my own research on integral education after one of our previous shows. I found it very interesting, and I found kind of a I made my own bullet list of principles, and one of them was learning by example. And if I relate that to what you were just saying, it seems to me like it means that, first of all, the Jews have to become integrally educated, and only then can they show it or teach it to the rest of the world. Is that so?
Yes, true. First the Jews, and they have to set an example for the nations of the world. But the moment they start doing it, even amongst them, between themselves, there's an interconnection between all people in the world. An interconnection, like we even now we discover that in science.
And you mentioned it before, yes.
And then we will see that even if only we started doing it, and the different networks between the Jewish people worldwide, will see how the world is calming down. It's not because we ourselves start adapting ourselves to that integral form, but that integral form between us also spreads to the whole world. And then, as a result, you will understand why we went into exile 2,000 years ago, in order to be that mixed with all people in the world.
Okay, so I'm going to take a side step for a second. So that means that the Jews in the diaspora,
including the 10 tribes that we have lost with the destruction of the first temple, that these are millions.
Let's just stick with the ones we know, okay?
Yeah, but suppose.
Okay. The Jews the known Jews in the diaspora, okay, they implement integral education on themselves. Wherever they live, they don't all move to Israel.
If they even start realizing a bit,
they begin to implement integral education everywhere they live.
They will feel a completely different attitude in relation toward them from the environment. They won't have to and don't need to come to Israel. We dispersed all over the world, not in order to come back specifically to Israel, but specifically in order to be active worldwide, everywhere.
And because there are Jews practically everywhere now, this will have a worldwide effect, you're saying?
Of course. This is why we left the land of Israel 2,000 years ago, and it says that the people of Israel went into exile in order to mix and join, next to them the souls of the nations of the world, in order to pass the method of education, of unity, through us to them.
Okay. Can I go into another principle?
Please.
Another one that struck me as very interesting was learning through discussion. There is no teacher standing and lecturing to students in schools or colleges or courses or whatever. As I understand it, people just talk to each other and learn that way. How does that work?
If we learn some ordinary science, then it's like a teacher and his students, or a professor talking to the auditorium. That's how the world is used to studying, because someone gives, bestows, and others, get the knowledge from him, and so on. If we're talking about integral education, it is the education itself, the way you deliver the material, the form has to be integral, meaning circle. Only in a circle. And also the way you perceive.
What do you mean by circle? Because I noticed there's a whole issue with circles here in this education. There's a circle is a big thing in integral education. Yeah, go on. Can you just explain that?
In integral education, in general, building the integral world or integral human being consists out of two. One is acquisition of knowledge, and the other is education.
And the difference is?
What is education?
Education? Well, I know, because in English...
It's like giving instruction, and, well, there's another word for it in Hebrew, chinuch.
Well, in English, it's the same word.
Impossible. If I teach a child something, then I teach him, I give him knowledge, information.
Information, you mean?
Information.
That's education. When I come to the university, there I get, knowledge.
Usually when people talk about a well-educated person, they usually refer to a person who has learned a lot, who has a lot of information. They don't talk about the moral qualities of a person.
No, has one another. He could be very bright, but bad.
That's in English. In English, education means...
I don't want to get into
means
the
the
English language.
Well, yeah, but this is the venue. Yeah, we're talking... Okay, but we're talking about American TV here.
An English gentleman, maybe for him, knowledge is enough. I'm talking about education, meaning that turns a person into a human being, a part of society, a part of his environment, becoming essential for society, essential for his environment, understanding human nature, following it, sharing the sorrow of others, really feeling himself as part of humanity.
So we're talking about...
He's courteous. He's not a gentleman and a politician and treats everything as a lawyer. He has a heartly attitude towards everything, even a loving attitude towards everything. This is what I call the right kind of education, integral education. And it has nothing to do with how much he knows.
Absolutely not.
So find for it some kind of a different word in English. If you find, I hope that you will.
I did some looking. I don't know. I thought about maybe edification, but I'm not sure.
So that's the difference between knowledge and education. Knowledge is someone who's smart, and education is a person who is good to others. And one has nothing to do with the other. And we see that it can even be the opposite.
Maybe a mensch in Yiddish would do.
Maybe, but closer, okay. And therefore, our integral education in total is divided into the part of the knowledge, or education, or call it however, where a person has to receive a certain amount of knowledge about our ego, the development of our ego, free choice, the influence of the environment on a person and a person on the environment. It's a certain amount of knowledge. It's not heavy, it's not big, even for people who don't like studying, or they think that they're not developed. But with respect to this kind of knowledge, everyone's developed. There's no one who's smarter or not as smart, because it's called the wisdom of the heart. We're learning actually about our nature.
Yeah, it's also something that no one's really...
It's very simple psychology. And the other half of the sum total of education is exercise that we, in a circle, on the first part, we can sit in front of the teacher in an auditorium, in a classroom, and listen to lectures.
That's the informational part.
Yeah, like in a university. Same. And on the second part, when we are already in the integral education, united in unity, when we want to start uniting and want to see what kind of actions do we have to take and what's the phenomenon that we feel as a result. Here we enter a laboratory. The laboratory we ourselves are the laboratory. We sit in a circle and we start doing exercises. Like psychologists have different surveys or different exercises, the experiments they make with groups of people and so on. We do that on ourselves. And the wisdom of this wisdom of integral education, it has certain specific number of integral exercises that we perform between us, and then as a result of these exercises we start understanding what does it mean to be in an integral society. How do I unite with others? How do I influence them? They influence me. How do we change as a result? What do we get out of this connection between us? Suddenly we discover within that unity in the center of our group, we find there great wisdom as a result of many people uniting, and there is like this flow from everyone to everyone.
What kind of wisdom?
It's an inner wisdom about our own nature that unravels. We start feeling how we're interconnected in a good way, how good it is to be together, how it gives each one of us uplifted spirits, a self of security and confidence. And it's very unique that all those things that I never ever understood in life before, I heard them 1,000 different times, but suddenly I start understanding them. Suddenly I hear them not from my teacher, but from a friend, from someone sitting next to me, and I start understanding. What are we talking about?
Can you give me an example?
It's in everything. Because a person doesn't understand things since they can't penetrate his small vessel, receptacle. I have this very small vessel to perceive all this information. I'm given equations and formulas. When we finish university, what do we really remember?
This much.
Yeah. So, and here, suddenly I start feeling things. I start understanding it because I unite with everyone's desire in the group. These are small groups, usually up to 10 people, and if there are more, then we make several such groups. And then I start feeling them. And along with that, I also start understanding them. I as if connect to myself, their feelings and their mind and heart. And suddenly I become great. I understand a lot. I suddenly acquire these new, really supernatural abilities.
Sounds like an expansion of the self.
Right. That's exactly what that is. And then I have a deeper, more profound understanding and feeling of man's nature and the nature of what surrounds me. And then as a result of being interconnected with them, I start learning what society actually means. What is human society? What is that? What is humanity? What kind of rule is it that we're all integrated? I suddenly start feeling that in nature, within each one of us, between us, there are like these connecting threads, a virtual network, natural one, coming from nature, where we're all interconnected, like with the examples that you once gave us about the monkeys that from one island to another, they really...
Must have been another show.
Okay, could be.
I know about it, but I don't remember.
But you heard about these things, right? Everyone knows about these experiments, that what happens in one place in the world suddenly happens in another place in the world, and in another place suddenly someone discovers one thing, it's discovered in another.
People inventing the same thing at the same time in different places. Yes.
And it is because we're interconnected. Just like now in the integral network that we're in a crisis. How come that in my country I'm experiencing a crisis and another country starts experiencing crisis that has there are no as if reasons for it?
People say it's because of Facebook and the internet.
No, it's not enough in order to really start getting into the crisis. The Facebook, it is if interconnects us. They're close to the truth, but it's not Facebook. It's the interconnection between us. It's not the ordinary virtual connection through our wires, the internet, and so on, but through our mental connections, that each one of us is connected with others. So we start feeling it as a result of working among these 10 people in a group. And from this small laboratory of mine, I start understanding then how the whole world is interconnected. I get the right attitude, the right approach to the modern world.
We have to stop here. I'm just going to try and summarize in a sentence, and you help me out, okay? So we said that integral education, first of all, means informing people about the situation, about the world being integral, and becoming more and more integral. So we have no choice but to learn how to become integral ourselves. Okay, that's the informational part. Now the educational part is the part of changing myself. And that's done through several steps, which we haven't gone through. But one of them is, well, perhaps the most important thing we talked about today is the circle, the becoming kind of expansion of the self. We said that we begin to feel each other. That's basically, is that a good summary of today's talk?
From this point on, we're on the highway.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Laitman.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being with us. Please be with us in our next shows, where we try and detail integral education even more. Thank you all, and bye.